Take your seats, please, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to begin our meeting. That's this.
Merci.
Madam Secretary General, members of the Plants Committee, observer parties, observers, delegates. As chair of the Plants Committee, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to this 27th meeting of the Plants Committee. It is always an honor and most especially a pleasure to meet with you as a committee. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, members of the committee, for your commitment and support to our work. I would like to pay particular tribute to the Vice Chair, Damien Riley, representative of Oceania. I would also like to thank the CITES Secretariat for the wonderful work that they do in order to ensure that our meetings are successful. And I would also like to thank the translators and interpreters who allow us to express ourselves in our working languages and be understood by everyone. We have a very heavy program with 45 agenda items, which we are to be dealing with in 6 3-hour sessions. It is an ambitious program dealing with key issues such as the conservation and trade in different tree species, medicinal and aromatic plants, the review of significant trade, NDFs, or the key area of botanical nomenclature. The work that we do is crucial in order to protect plant species that are threatened by international trade. I would encourage you to participate actively in our discussions and to cooperate constructively throughout the week. Insofar as possible, I would ask you to keep your speaking time to a minimum so that everyone who wants to take the floor can do so. I would suggest that we try to keep to 5 minutes for committee members, 4 for observer parties, and 3 minutes speaking time for observers. I would also urge you to speak at a rate that allows the interpreters to actually convey your message. I would ask observers taking the floor on behalf of a number of organizations not to list them all. Please just say how many organizations you are representing and provide the list of those involved to the Secretariat so that we can save time. As is our custom, I will give the floor to committee members, then to observer parties, and then to observers that have been invited to attend this meeting. I know that I can count on you and that we will not run late. I know that you are eager to congratulate me on my assured and brilliant chairing skills, and I'm delighted that you are so pleased with me, and it's great for morale. I must say it's quite an ego trip for me. However, I think it would be best for you to actually cut to the chase and address key issues when you take the floor. So I could, however, suggest that we have a competition to see who can make the most complimentary remarks about the chair at our closing ceremony. And that will give you every opportunity to think about what to say, bearing in mind, of course, the nominative determinism of my name, Flore, or Flora. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we need a quorum in order to be able to make decisions, and the Secretariat tells me that we have enough people, this in keeping with Rule 13 of our Rules of Procedure. I therefore would like to call to order the 27th meeting of the Plants Committee. Thank you very much. I wish you every success.
Maintenant, je passe.
I would now like to give the floor to the Secretary General, who will give her opening remarks. You have the floor, Madam Secretary General.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I was a little concerned about clapping because I didn't know if that was going to mean we were complimenting you too early, but thank you so much for that lovely speech. Madam Chair of the Plants Committee, members of the Plants Committee, distinguished delegates and participants, dear colleagues and friends, welcome to Geneva and welcome to the 27th meeting of the Plants Committee. Warm thanks to all of you for traveling here to join us. I am sure I speak for all of us when I thank the government of Switzerland for their generous financial contribution for this meeting to be held at CICG. We have more than 270 participants registered to attend the meeting, including 59 observer parties and 35 observer organizations. For those who have heard me urging more attention to the role of plants, the interest in the work of the Plants Committee is very encouraging. It is a privilege to address such a dedicated group of experts like yourselves, a reflection of your commitment to ensure the long-term conservation of plant species through the effective implementation of CITES. Since we last met in June 2023, our chair, the vice chair, and the members of the committee have been working closely with the Secretariat and the intersessional working groups so that significant progress can be reported at the present meeting. The precious time, technical expertise, and advice you have given to support the implementation of the decisions adopted at the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties have paid off. The agenda reflects the milestones achieved collectively during this intersessional period. Thanks to your hard work, you have draft recommendations that will guide parties to improve the long-term implementation of the Convention in matters relating to agarwood, orchids, neotropical tree species, African tree species, and medicinal and aromatic plant species. As the Chair has mentioned, PC 27 has a packed agenda with 45 items to be discussed. 57 documents, more than 2,000 pages, have been prepared covering a broad range of issues, including the review of significant trade process that is critical to ensure trade in Appendix 2 listed species is sustainable. I will have more to say about this a little later. We look forward to receiving your input on the progress made in the implementation of the numerous decisions directed to the Secretariat. This includes the new global study on CITES listed rosewoods, Annotation 15, Pau Brasilia echinata, medicinal and aromatic plants, guidance on artificial propagation, CITES and forests, nomenclature checklists for diasporas and aloes, and of course, the new phase of the CITES Tree Species Project. I would like to express my gratitude to donors who supported the Secretariat through their financial contributions to implement the decisions of the Conference of the Parties when they met in Panama in 2022. I also wish to acknowledge our dedicated partners working with us on associated projects. Thanks to our collective efforts and discussions at the present meeting, I am confident we can report to the Standing Committee at SC 78 and the Conference of the Parties at COP20 that we were up to the challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, we do, however, have challenging discussions ahead of us. We must review the progress achieved in the implementation of recommendations under the review of significant trade process, including for African rosewood, Pterocarpus erinaceus, and make recommendations for the new species selected following COP19. I am thankful for the diligence in which the range states implementing these recommendations have communicated progress to the Secretariat. This has allowed us to report with greater accuracy and will greatly facilitate the recommendations that the plant committees will develop in the upcoming days. Later this week, you will have the joint discussions with the Animals Committee. To start on an inspiring note, we will open with a new guidance on non-detriment findings. It was really great to host a passionate CITES community in beautiful Nairobi in December 2023 for the International Workshop on NDFs. Furthermore, our collaboration with the Animals Committee will delve into matters crucial to both committees, from the CITES strategic vision, assessment of Appendix 1 listed species, country-wide significant trade, to identification materials and nomenclature matters. It is going to be a packed day and a half for the joint session with 20 documents to be discussed. I would like to express my gratitude also for the collaborative and participatory way work has been delivered by the Plants Committee, supported by observer parties and organizations. My sincere thanks also to the Chair and Vice Chair for their leadership and collegiality. It is always a pleasure working alongside them. At the same time, I am compelled to ask you for your support of the hardworking members of the CITES Secretariat. Over the years, we have seen an exponential growth of the workload of the Secretariat, but without the core financial and human resources needed to keep up with this growth. There are only 3 scientific officers and 1 program assistant supported by the core budget resources, and 1 junior officer supported by the trust fund savings as agreed by the COP until 2025. They prepare most documents for these meetings, and we are lucky to have such generous colleagues who get involved in all work and help as much as possible. However, it has become an unsustainable workload, and I fear for their health and well-being. I kindly ask you to please be considerate of the amount of work requested from the Secretariat, especially when it relates to activities that may be outside of the Convention's core work. We are finding it more and more challenging to have the time to do the core work of the Convention, which is servicing the meetings, implementing the program of work, and providing technical advice and support to the parties. With this kind request, I close by informing you that our dear Elena Kivanskaya has retired, and Ms. Olga Montero is now the document's assistant. We are, however, fortunate that Elena is able to accompany us this next 2 weeks, so please wish her good luck in this new chapter of her life. Also, our dear Juan Carlos Vasquez has taken a brave step in his career and has joined UNEP in Nairobi on the 1st of July. Ms. Sophie Flensburg has been selected on a temporary appointment as Chief of the Legal Unit. Congratulations to her. And finally, we have several wonderful new interns, and you will see them around working hard to support the meetings. I wish us all good fortune, good weather. We made sure that it was sunny today, fruitful discussions, and a successful meeting. Madam Chair, over to you, and happy chairing. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Secretary General. I certainly hope that the weather is going to be good. I would now like to give the floor to the Secretariat to present the Declaration of Conflict of Interest. I believe that there are also some housekeeping remarks to be made, so you have the floor.
Everybody, and welcome to Geneva also from our side. First, a couple of logistical remarks. As the chair mentioned, you will see that the room has been set up for the joint session at the end of the week, because we will not have time to change the setting of the room between the morning session of the Plants Committee on Friday morning and the joint session on Friday afternoon. So the room is including both participants for the Plants Committee and participants for the Animals Committee at this point. It is very important that you don't move your placard anywhere else from where it is now, even if it feels like you're sitting way back and there is plenty of space closer to the podium. It is very important that you do not move closer. It's not like a cinema where you can sit where you want, because your placard is mapped, your microphone is mapped to what, for the podium here to be able to see who's asking for the floor, and that is mapped against where your placard is. So don't move it, or you won't be able to speak in your own name. So we have this mapping now, which also means that we can see here who is asking for the floor, and we don't have to sit with binoculars, which is quite comfortable for the chair. When you would like to speak, you request for the floor, and it's us up here who will then give you the floor. We have made some savings of not having a technician doing that. So sometimes we'll ask for your indulgence when technical matters occur. Also, when the chair is asking for representatives to express their interest in participating in a working group, you will be asked to press the button and then asked to unpress it once we have noted down all the participants who are interested in participating in working groups. Finally, the chair, as usual, will call on speakers in the order of members of the committee, party observers or parties having the observer status, and other observers. Please do not press the button until called upon, so that you do not show up on the screen until it's the turn of parties or observers to speak. That's quite important as well. So those were the, I think those were the household matters, just so you be a little bit indulgent with us, because this is the first time we're doing it this way. We also wanted to let you know that the meeting is being live streamed, and this is done by the Secretariat itself as well. I've just got news from Australia that it's working well, but I wanted you to know that we're being live streamed across the world. So that's good news as well. Just speaking to the declaration of interest, of conflict of interest, we have received from all members these declarations, and we have no declaration of conflict of interest to report to the committee. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you. Members of the committee are invited to take note of what the Secretariat has just told us. And I think we'll be able to wind up our consideration of this matter and say that the committee notes that there has been no declaration of conflict of interest when it comes to impartiality, objectivity, or independence of Plants Committee members with respect to the items on this agenda. Thank you. We are now going to move on to the next agenda item, that is to say, the rules of procedure. And I would invite committee members to take note that the rules of procedure as amended at the 24th session in July 2018 in the annex to PC document 27.2 is applicable for this session. Would anyone like to take the floor on the rules of procedure? I do not see any requests for the floor from members, observer members, or observers. The committee notes that the rules of procedure as amended at the 24th session in Geneva in July 2018 in the annex of document PC 27.2 are in force for this session. The next agenda item we have before us has to do with the agenda of this meeting. I would invite committee members to adopt the agenda that we have in document PC 27 Doc 3. The floor is open to committee members.
Je ne vois pas.
I see no requests for the floor. The floor is now open to observer parties. Please press on the button to request the floor if you would like to do so.
Pas de
I see no requests for the floor. I would now like to give the floor to observers.
Je ne vois pas.
I see no requests for the floor. Now, I do tend to look up into the room to see if there are any requests for the floor. I'm going to have to get used to looking at this screen. But in any case, I see no requests for the floor. The committee has therefore adopted the agenda for the PC 27 meeting that we have in document PC 27, Doc 3.
Pour le point suivant,
The next agenda item is the working program. I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce that document. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning all. The Secretariat published a revised version of the working program on 24 June 2024. The working program was revised to include item 33 on periodic review of species included in appendices 1 and 2, and specifically to include item 33.2 on the selection of species for the periodic review. These items were added to this afternoon's plenary session after trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species. That was the only change to the working program, Chair and committee members. The Plants Committee is invited to adopt its working program as set out in PC 27, Doc 4, Ref 1. Thank you, Chair.
merci.
Thank you. Members of the committee have the floor.
Pas de demande de...
I see no requests for the floor. I now give the floor to observer parties.
Pas...
I see no request for the floor. Observers? Do we have any requests from the floor from observers?
Pas de comment...
I see no comments from observers. So the committee adopts the working program of the 27th meeting of the Plants Committee as set out in document PC 27, Doc 4, Rev 1.
Nous passons...
So we shall now move to the last point on the administrative and financial matters. It is the item on the admission of observers. I would like to call on the Secretariat to present the document PC 27 Doc 5. You have the floor from the Secretariat.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In accordance with Article 4, Rule 4, Paragraph 2 of the Rules of Procedure for the Plants Committee, any body or technically qualified agency in protection, conservation or management of wild fauna and flora wishing to be represented at the meeting of the committee shall submit a request at least 30 days before the meeting. The document presents a list of the observers that have submitted a request and approved, and it is in the annex of our document. Thank you.
Je remercie le secrétaire.
I thank the Secretariat for presenting the document, and I would like to invite members of the committee to make any comments if they so wish, and to take note of the list.
Pas de réaction.
I see no request for the floor. Any observer parties that wish to take the floor?
Pas de...
No request for the floor either. Observers. I see no request for the floor. So the committee takes note of the list of observers invited to participate at the 27th meeting of the Plants Committee as set out in document PC27 doc 5.
Pour le point suivant,
The next item on our agenda is on the Plants Committee strategic planning for 2023 to 2025, so between COP19 and COP20. We have two documents. First of all, document PC27 doc 6.1 and PC27 doc 6.2.
je vais vous présenter.
I shall present document PC27 doc 6.1, where we have the working plan of the Plants Committee for 2023 to 2025 between COP19 and COP20. This document gives an overview of the mandate that was given to the Plants Committee, the specific mandate for the Plants Committee and the joint mandate, and the work with the Standing Committee. At the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee, which was held in Geneva in 2023, we presented our document on the progress in the implementation of the current work plan, which can be found in the document SC 77 doc 6, which the Standing Committee noted. The present document also presents the progress made since the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee and the work to come for each of the resolutions presented in Annex 1, and the decisions are presented in Annex 2 for the work plan of the Plants Committee. This document also looks at the agenda items and their relevant documents, and those of the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee, which are part of the joint work. The following agenda items, 19.2, 19.42, the decisions, and Decision 16.162 Rev COP19 and Decision 18.151 Rev COP19 are not agenda items of this meeting and will be subject to reports at the next meeting of the Standing Committee, the 78th meeting. So I now invite members of the Plants Committee to take note of the working plan for the period 2023 to 2025. Do we have any requests for the floor from members of the committee?
Je donne la parole à...
I open the floor to the representative of the Asia region.
Testing. Good morning, Madam Chair. Perhaps I'm just testing the system as well. I'd just like to point out a correction for page 4, the last row of Annex 1 in the document, that myself, given name, initials KY, family name Chong, alternate Asia, is the PC lead as co-chair of the materials for the identification of specimens of CITES listed plant species working group, together with Mr. H. Robertson, Oceania from the AC. This might also impact in Annex 2 under decision, I believe it's 19 point, 19 the associated decision 19.142, the PC lead list as well. Thank you.
Merci.
I thank the representative for Asia, and we take note of your comments. Do we have any further requests from members of the committee? I do not see any on my list, so I shall now open the floor to any observer parties. The floor is open.
Pas de demande.
I see no requests from observer parties. The floor is now open to any observers who wish to take the floor.
Pas de demande non.
No requests from any observers either. So, the Plants Committee takes note of the implementation of the Plants Committee work plan for the period of 2023 to 2025 as presented in the document PC 27 Doc 6.1 as amended at the meeting.
Le point suivant à l'ordre du...
The next item on the agenda is on the preparation of the report of the chair of the Plants Committee to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. This document is being drafted and it will cover the activities of the Plants Committee between the 19th and 20th conferences of the parties. This report will include the following elements: the details linked to the composition of the Plants Committee, the list of the intersessional working groups that have been set up, including the joint intersessional working groups with the Animals Committee, the work plan, which will be included in an annex, which will provide information on progress made. I will contact the leads and co-leads of these working groups so that they can make their contribution to the report. And now I would invite members of the Plants Committee to note that the report is being drafted. Do we have any comments from members of the committee?
Pas de demande.
I see no request for the floor from committee members. I now open the floor to observer parties.
Pas de demande de parole.
I see no request for the floor either. I now open the floor for any observers who wish to comment.
Pas.
I see no request for the floor from observers. So the committee takes note that the chair of the Plants Committee shall prepare a report for the 20th Conference of the Parties to CITES, and she will request the contributions of members of the committee for the drafting of the report.
Membres du comité.
Members of the committee, as you have seen in relation to the work plan, we have just finished the first part of our morning in 1.5 hours. Please don't be shy. Do use the button. So with your permission, we shall continue with our work and we'll move to item 32, which covers trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species.
Ce point porte sur.
So this item has two documents. The first is PC 2732.1, which is the report of the Secretariat on decision 19.261, as well as the intercessional working group on the decision 19.263. So I'd invite the Secretariat to present the document PC 27 Doc 32.1.
Thank you, Chair. Dear ladies and gentlemen, document PC 27 Doc 32.1 on trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species is published with an addendum, and it's recently separately published Annex 1. The three documents present progress on decision 19.261A to C, and I will introduce those three jointly. Progress on decision 19.261D and decision 19.263B regarding a draft resolution on MAPS is reported by the Intercessional Working Group on that matter in document PC 27 Doc 32.2. Decisions 19.261A and B have been fully implemented, and you can see the outputs on our website. The Secretariat secured funding for the study under decision 19.261C, thanks to funding from the European Union, and we have worked with Traffic and the Royal Botanic Gardens queue to implement the study. While the study is pending final revisions and consultations before the Secretariat will make it available in full, the addendum to document 32.1 and its annexes contain a summary of key results regarding the elements of the TORs that were agreed at PC 26. They also contain an outline of possible next steps in our view, in the view of the Secretariat. They contain draft decisions for the consideration of the committee, and the revised recommendations in that addendum replace those in the original document PC 27 Doc 32.1. Based on the progress so far achieved, the committee is invited to provide feedback on the progress in implementing the decision 19.261. Our proposal to circulate the completed study for the consideration of the Plants Committee ahead of the documentation deadline for the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee, which will allow sufficient time for comments as described in paragraph 3 of the addendum, and to provide feedback on the proposed next steps in paragraphs 21 to 25 of the addendum, and the draft decisions proposed in paragraph 26 of the addendum. The committee is also invited to, if appropriate, agree that decisions 19.261 to 19.263 have been completed and can be proposed for deletion to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Finally, the committee is invited to report its recommendations to the Standing Committee. Thank you very much.
Merci.
I thank the Secretariat. So the committee is invited to provide feedback on the decisions which are in paragraph 10 of the document. The floor is open to members of the committee.
pas de demande de...
I see no request for the floor from members of the committee. Oh, the floor is now open for observer parties, and I see that Brazil is on my list.
Brésil, vous avez la parole.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Merci. Thank you, Chair. We would like to extend our gratitude to the Secretariat for providing this comprehensive report and to our colleagues in the Intersessional Working Group for the efforts in putting together this draft resolution. Brazil attributes great value to the work that is being undertaken on medicinal and aromatic plant species. We believe it is undeniable that any trade involving a plant or parts thereof also entails a transfer of genetic material and, in many cases, associated traditional knowledge. This logic seems even more applicable when dealing with species of medicinal and aromatic plants, especially concerning the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities. Information document COP 18 Inf 11, which was to be taken in consideration according to the mandate of the working group, proposes under Objective 3, among other actions, to assess synergies with relevant tools and guidelines, case studies, access and benefit sharing, and other aspects of sustainable use of biodiversity provided by CBD and EPBs. On PP8 of the draft resolution, we acknowledge the possibility of using novel techniques to produce specimens through biotechnology. However, we fail to recall on PP3 the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework related to this subject. In order to foster this holistic approach towards aligning sustainable use and conservation of CITES-listed medicinal and aromatic plant species, while recognizing the contribution of traditional knowledge, we suggest inserting an additional phrase in the first preambular paragraph as follows. And if we allow me, Madam Chair, we would read. Recalling that trade in CITES-listed species, including CITES-listed medicinal and aromatic plant species, must comply with the requirements specified in the Convention, instead of, and in other relevant multilateral environmental agreements, including those related to the fair and equitable sharing of benefits that arise from the utilization of genetic resources and from digital sequence information on genetic resources, as well as traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources. And if possible, Brazil would like to join the working group. I don't know if there's a possibility. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I thank Brazil and their representative, but I think you may be a little ahead of us because that will be covered under the next item after we have heard the presentation from the working group chair. So perhaps you could provide us with a brief summary of what you have just said. So if you could provide us with a summary once we've heard from the chair of the working group when they present the document PC 27.32.2. So I'd like to specify once more that we are looking at document PC 27.32.1. I see that we have a list of requests for the floor. So I would like to specify that we are asking for any comments on document PC 27.32.1, which is the one we are currently considering. So I give the floor to the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the achievement of the Secretariat and the researchers who, through their extensive research, have presented important information on trade management in medical and aromatic plants. The delegate of the Republic of Korea generally agrees with the recommendation presented in this document and its addendum. However, we'd like to express our delegation's concern about the methodology of the online survey. In practice, one of the difficulties we encounter in the process of the trade permit of products made from MAP is that the name of the ingredients in the products are recorded in a very complicated way. Furthermore, many companies utilize the CAS registry number created by the American Chemical Society, which presents a potential challenge due to the varying nomenclature used to describe the plants from which the chemical are derived. These included old scientific names, synonyms, and common names. We'd be grateful if you could confirm whether these issues have been taken into account in the online survey. If not, we believe that a survey of the databases used in the actual industry should be conducted even after the decision draft in paragraph 26 of the PC 27 doc point 32.1 addendum has been implemented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of Korea, and I now open the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We support sharing the final version of the study conducted by Traffic in partnership with Royal Botanic Gardens Kew on behalf of the CITES Secretariat with the Plants Committee prior to SC 78 to allow time for comments and feedback. We recognise the importance of addressing the ambiguities and discrepancies of the taxonomy and nomenclature matching exercise outlined in paragraph 5 to 8 of the addendum, and therefore support the proposed draft decisions in paragraph 26 of the addendum, and to consider whether this could be added to the nomenclature work plan and draft decisions in document PC 2741.1. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie la...
I'd like to thank the representative of the United Kingdom for her comments. Do we have any further requests for the floor from any observer parties?
Je ne vois pas.
I see no requests, so I now open the floor for comments from observers.
Je donne la parole.
I open the floor to Traffic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are giving this intervention on behalf of the IUCN Medicinal Plants Specialist Group and Traffic. Traffic would like to highlight some of the recommendations arising from this study, which we were pleased to carry out in partnership with Royal Botanic Gardens Kew on behalf of the CITES Secretariat. Traffic notes that of the 15 species included in the market monitoring survey, the average number of common medicinal names from MPNS was 80 per species. To help refine search terms in future studies, Traffic encourages parties and other stakeholders involved in the supply chains of these species to share any names for species known to be most commonly used in trade, including for non-medicinal purposes. Traffic also notes that the stakeholder analysis indicated a need for discussions between exporting and importing parties to better understand key actors along the supply chain of CITES listed maps and encourage parties to share any relevant data in this regard. In order to ensure that annotations align with the criteria set out in Resolution Conf 1121, Traffic believes that feedback from individuals involved in the harvesting, processing, and exporting of these species would be most valuable, given the limitations in assessing these from trade data, and we would encourage consultations by top exporting parties, as noted in the addendum to PC 27 Doc 32.1. Customs enforcement agencies and other stakeholders involved in the supply chains would benefit from up-to-date guidance that can assist in the interpretation and understanding of annotations of map species products in trade. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the observer for the comments. Do we have any further requests for the floor?
No.
No.
Merci à tous.
Thank you. With respect to this agenda item, the Plants Committee takes note of your comments, and in particular, I do apologize. We have had a request for the floor from the North American region. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize for making this intervention sort of in the last minute, but I would like to just note that the North American region, first of all, thanks the Secretariat for the update on this work, and with regard to the proposed next steps, the North American region appreciates the approach suggested to allow opportunity for the Plants Committee to provide their advice on the study once it's distributed. In the interest of transparency, we would suggest the Secretariat also issue a notification to note that the study has been shared with the committee. This would serve the additional function of alerting parties that may wish to identify their interest in providing their own technical reviews to their regional member on the Plants Committee for his or her consideration. Thank you, Chair.
I would like to thank the representative of the North America region. If there are no further requests for the floor, I will continue with my concluding remarks on this agenda item.
Merci pour votre...
Thank you for your patience. I would like to say the following. There will be a nomenclature working group set up. Their mandate will be to consider Annexes 2 to 4 to the addendum of PC 2732.1. The draft decisions for COP20 include recommendations proposed by the United Kingdom. In conclusion, with respect to this agenda item, the committee takes note of the progress made and the feedback received. The full study will be made available for full consideration by the Plants Committee before the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee. In the interest of transparency, the Secretariat should issue a notification with respect to the publication of this study in order to get comments on the study. Could I ask if these concluding remarks suit you?
Just to mention that the comments on the study should be submitted to the members of the committee.
Cela est clair?
Is that clear for everyone? In addition to what I have just said, comments on the study will be made available to members of the Plants Committee. Thank you for your patience. Mexico has requested the floor. Thank you, Madam, and greetings to everyone. I shall be very brief. We have just one comment to make on this with respect to when the committee members consider the results of this study before the meeting of the Standing Committee. On that score, we wonder whether it would be useful to take into account the results of the discussions here in Geneva on 32.2, because there might well be a connection with respect to the draft resolution. So the mandate you're giving the committee might include that the Plant Committee, before the meeting of the Standing Committee, take into account the results of the intersessional working group. I wonder if that makes sense to colleagues. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Mexico. And thank you for your brevity.
Okay. Merci.
Thank you, Mexico. Indeed, the results of the intersessional working groups discussions will be taken into account. And if the draft decisions proposed are taken on board, we will then agree that decisions 19261 to 263 will consider to have been implemented, and therefore the COP21 will be asked to consider that they have been implemented. Does that suit you, Mexico?
Mexique a la parole.
You have the floor, sir. Thank you, Madam. Well, 32.1 currently under consideration and 32.2 are connected. We are shortly going to be thinking about the report of the intersessional working group, which will be presenting draft resolutions on this matter. So the results of the study are relevant to that work as well. What we were suggesting is that when we get to 32.2, it might be useful when the committee considers these issues before the meeting of the standing committee. When it considers the results of the study, it might also like to consider the resolutions. 32.1 and 32.2 are interlinked. So we do think that the committee should consider the work of the study alongside the results that we have enshrined in 32.2 with the draft resolutions. Thank you, Madam.
Okay. Merci.
Thank you, Mexico, for that helpful set of remarks. You are quite right. We do need to bear in mind that these documents are interlinked. Dealing with them as one item might have made things complicated for us, but you're quite right. The results of the work of the intersessional working group in PC 27 Doc 32.2 should be taken into account in the course of our intersessional work. So perhaps that is something that should be added to the concluding remarks of the chair, if members of the Plants Committee would agree. Thank you very much for that.
Ok, merci.
I would suggest that we move on to the next agenda item, that is to say PC 27 Doc 32-2, which was submitted by the chair of the Intersessional Working Group on Trade in Medicinal and Aromatic Plant Species, Ms. Ursula Moser, representative of the Europe region. And I give her the floor.
It take me surprising. It's go very fast. So I try to be brief. So, okay. I first of all would like to thank the committee and the members of the working group for the very fruitful and also very interesting discussion. And I would like to give a special thank to the Secretariat, to Martin, for his endless support, because we had quite a lot of discussion. So thank you so much. At the last Plants Committee, PC 26, last year in Geneva, it was decided, the committee noted that there is a preference for a new resolution to be developed, and this was then an intersessional working group, and as a new resolution on MAPs should focus entirely on plants product, and involvement of the Animals Committee was not required. So based on this consideration, the Plants Committee established this intersessional working group, and the mandate, we focused mainly on a draft for a new resolution on medicinal and aromatic plant products. Of course, we considered all the documents mentioned here to be included in this draft. So we first started at the end of August 23 with a focus on the mandate C to draft this new resolution. And in a first step, the opinion of the working group members was sought to guide what this new resolution should provide. So there were a lot of discussions going on, and a lot of input came, and then we had online meetings, and in November was the first online meeting then, and we compiled the draft discussion and summarized all what we could collect, and then we decided to start with a draft, and that was done over the holidays, I have to say. So we worked a lot for this draft during Christmas holidays. So in February we had another online meeting, and the output of the working group resulted now in a draft resolution which is attached to this document. So I also have to mention that one member of the working group called for additional revision and also streamlining of the current draft resolution, which could be done in a in-session working group here in the Plants Committee. And therefore, the recommendations are that the Plant Committee is invited to note the text of the draft resolution on medicinal and aromatic plant species proposed by this working group. Also note that one member of the working group considered that this text could benefit from additional streamlining and precisions. So therefore, we would also recommend to establish an in-session working group with the mandate to further improve the draft resolution in the annex to this present document and in line with decision 19.263, paragraph B, and formulate recommendations for consideration of the committee in line with decision 19.263, paragraph C. And at last summit, its recommendation to the standing committee or the conference of parties as appropriate, but I think it will be the standing committee anyway. So I'm not sure if there should be included something like we heard from Mexico to include the results of the study, but I don't know how we could include this. Maybe we could work on this as well for the mandate for the in-session working group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the Europe representative for introducing the report of the Intersessional Working Group. Thank you. Would any members of the committee like to take the floor?
Pas de demande de...
I see no requests for the floor, which is now open to observer parties. Very well.
Merci.
Thank you. I've had 4 requests for the floor. I'm going to give the floor to Brazil so that they can summarize the statement they made earlier, which had to do with this draft resolution. I will then give the floor to Mexico. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize for making my intervention earlier. But we were dealing here with some technical issues since when we arrived, there were no chairs at all behind my placard, so we were dealing with that survival, I would say, issues that set us on a rough start, and I apologize for that. But to summarize what I said before, we believe that information document COP 18-11, which was to be taken in consideration according to the mandate of the working group. This document proposes under Objective 3, among other actions, to assess synergies with relevant tools and guidelines, case studies, access and benefit sharing, and other aspects of sustainable use of biodiversity provided by CBD and EPBs. On PP 8 of the draft resolution, we acknowledge the possibility of using and I quote, novel techniques to produce specimens through biotechnology. However, we fail to recall on PP3 the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework related to this subject. So Brazil would have a suggestion to make to the text, and if possible, we would like to engage in the work of the working group if possible. So, of course, we could work with the language during the working group, but we would suggest inserting an additional phrase in the first PP that would recognize the other relevant multilateral environmental agreements, including those related to the fair and equitable sharing of benefits that arise from the utilization of genetic resources and from digital sequence information on genetic resources, as well as traditional knowledge with genetic resources. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
Thank you, Brazil. I'm glad that the technical issues have been resolved and that you have a chair. Or if there's still problems, we'll try and get them dealt with. I now give the floor to Mexico. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank the chair of the Intersessional Working Group for having worked on this draft resolution. We are certainly interested in how all this is going to develop. Now, with respect to what was said, I think that what is being discussed here will be useful for the committee when it considers the results of the previous study. So we're going to be interested in how the Intersessional Working Group works to improve on this draft resolution. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Mexico, for that clarification. I would now like to give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Madam Chair. Our delegation would like to thank the Chair and the participants of the group. We value the work being done by the group and within the Convention in general on the matter. The Russian Federation was keen on participating in the intersessional work. However, at a certain stage, our designated experts stopped receiving working materials on the matter. We are confident that it is a technical issue. We have no concrete objections on the text of the draft resolution provided in the documentation, but we are interested in having additional in-session discussion on the draft. So we are interested in taking part in the work of the in-session group as proposed and in the documentation. Thank you.
Merci.
I thank the representative of Russia, and I am sorry to hear that you were unable to continue with the intersessional work. We will give you an opportunity to participate in the in-session work. I now open the floor and give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports an in-session working group to refine the draft resolution on medicinal and aromatic plant species. We have a suggested amendment for paragraph 14 and would be happy to share this in the in-session working group or on the floor if preferred.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the United Kingdom representative. Since should a working group be established, I think it would be preferable to make your comment at the working group and then we will learn about them later. Thank you for your understanding. I now give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. First, Indonesia would like to express its appreciation to the Secretariat and Plan Committee for preparation of the document on aromatic and medicine plant. Indonesia would like to acknowledge and support Brazil regarding this concern. Indonesia would like to emphasize the importance of the access and benefit sharing from utilization of the genetic resources and traditional knowledge related to the aromatic and medicine plant, including its digital sequence information. This is very important considering the needs of the harmony between CBD and CITES Convention, which there is the Nagoya Protocol regulate the access and benefit sharing from its utilization. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of Indonesia. Do we have any further requests for the floor from observer parties? I see none. So I now open the floor to observers. You are welcome to take the floor if you so wish. I see no request for the floor from observers.
Aussi, le comité.
Thus, the Plants Committee agrees that the recommendations in paragraph 9 of document PC 27 doc 32.2. So within these recommendations, it is invited to establish an in-session working group. The in-session working group will have the following mandate: to further improve the draft resolution on medicinal and aromatic plant species, which is in the annex to the document PC27 Doc 32.2, in accordance with paragraph B of decision 19.263, and to formulate recommendations for consideration of the committee in line with decision 19.263, paragraph C. So this is the mandate for the in-session working group on medicinal and aromatic plant species. We shall now proceed to set up and establish the members of this working group. I suggest that it should be chaired by the representative of the Europe region. Are you in accord? Do you agree with that? Thank you for your willingness to chair the group. So who else in the committee would like to participate in this working group? I see Asia. The Africa region. You can press on your button so that you don't need to raise your placard. Asia, Africa. Now I open the list to observer parties. Now, I have the USA, the Russian Federation, United Kingdom, India, Australia, Germany, Brazil, Switzerland, Kenya, China, Canada, Georgia, Austria, Republic of Korea, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia, European Union, Malaysia, Ghana, Saudi Arabia, I think I have listed all the observer parties who wish to participate in the working group. Now we shall open the floor to observers. Mexico, we have said. Now we will move to observers. So we'll clear this list of observer parties. Could you please press the button once more so that we can clear the list? Okay. So observers, we have traffic, American Herbal Products Association, UNEP, WCMC, IWMC, WWF, SSN, the Sustainable Use Coalition South Africa, So the list for the working group is thus established. The Secretariat will provide you with information of the time, day and room in which you will meet for this working group. I thank you.
Donc, nous passons au point suivant.
So we shall now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is document PC27 Doc 33.2. This document was prepared by the Secretariat, so I give the floor to the Secretariat to present the document. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC27 Doc 33.2, also AC33 Doc 45.2 Ref 1, was prepared by the Secretariat and provides the Plants Committee in Annex 2 with 3 summary tables prepared based on the provisions in Resolution Con 14.8 Ref Cop 19. The review of significant trade post-COP 19 summary output is contained in document PC26 Doc 16.5 and was considered at PC26 in terms of the RST process. The Plants Committee should note that revisions to the document relates to paragraph 8, D Roman 4 or little IV and Annex 1 on fauna, and therefore there are no changes to the document as it relates to flora. The Secretariat appreciates the funding provided by the United States of America that made it possible to undertake the required analysis and the collaboration with UNEP WCMC with the preparation of the outputs. Because the assessment could not be prepared for the first meeting of the Plants Committee after COP19, it's proposed that the period to review the identified taxa extend for the remainder of the current intersessional period until the 21st meeting of the Conference of the Parties. The Secretariat would like to remind the Committee that the observations by the Secretariat and draft decisions contained in paragraph 9 will be considered during the joint meeting of the Animals and Plants Committees. The Plants Committee should note that the Appendix 1 listed taxa, whose populations are in international trade for commercial purposes, contained in Output 1, may merit further engagements with parties to verify the correct use of purpose codes and source codes, and the Committee may wish to draw any concerns to the attention of the Secretariat and the Standing Committee as appropriate. The Plants Committee is invited to establish a schedule for the periodic review of the appendices for plants based on outputs in Annex 2, and as appropriate, the RST post-COP19 summary output contained in document PC26, Doc 16.5, and identify a list of plant taxa to review during the next intersessional period until COP21 in 2028. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the Secretariat for presenting the document, and now I open the floor to committee members for any comments. I see no request for the floor from members of the committee. I now open the floor to observer parties. If you wish to take the floor, it is open.
Pas de demande non.
I see no requests. I now open the floor to observers.
Pas de demande.
No request for the floor. So, the committee agrees with the recommendations which are in paragraph 13 of document PC27 Doc 33.2, AC 33 Doc 45.2.
Dans le cadre de ce...
So, under this item, which concerns the periodic review of species included in appendices 1 and 2, an in-session working group shall be set up, and the mandate is as follows. To establish a schedule for the periodic review of appendices, and based on the outputs indicated in paragraph 8, identify a list of animal or plant taxa to be reviewed during the next intersessional period up until COP21, and taking into account the comments for the committee. So this is the working group which is established under this document 33.2. Would Mexico care to chair this working group? I thank you. I thank you, Mexico. So we have an in-session working group chaired by Mexico. Who else from the committee would like to participate in the working group?
Okay, donc Europe.
So we have Europe. Who else would like to be a member of this working group? I'm asking first from committee members. Now, observer parties who wish to participate. I had Indonesia. Are you withdrawing? Okay. So the list is as follows. United States of America. India. United Kingdom, Germany, China, South Africa, Portugal, Ghana, EU. So I have everyone: United States, India, China, Portugal, European Union, United Kingdom, Germany, South Africa, and Ghana. And I also add Kenya. Now, any observers who wish to take part? IBT, SUCO, SA, IUCN, UNEP, WCMC, Traffic, so the balance amongst observer parties is respected. So you will be meeting in session. The date, it will probably be tomorrow afternoon in room 14. But you will receive further information from the Secretariat. So that covers item 33.2. We will now start on the items which are linked to botanical nomenclature. It is a set of 8 documents from PC 27 Doc 41.1 through to Doc 41.8.
Merci. Alors,
thank you. So now we will start with the consideration of document PC 27, Doc 41.1. So I now invite the nomenclature specialist, Ms. Ahmed Kropa, to present the document. Thank you.
Vous avez la parole.
You have the floor.
The document, thank you, Madam Chair. The document PC27 Doc 41.1 summarizes the progress achieved in implementation of the decisions on the nomenclature for flora and the work plan of the Plants Committee in matters relating to nomenclature. This document covers several aspects relevant to checklists and standard nomenclature references on cacti, rosewoods, yews, and agar wood-producing genera, the correct name of Dipteryx oleifera and Pulnesia sarmientoi, correct treatment and placement of Turbinicarpus X rosae florus on the appendices, and the issue of homonym names using Dracena marginata as an example. Progress relating to standard nomenclature references for aloes, Malagasy ebonies, Cumarus, African mahoganies, Appendix 2 listed orchids, pachypodiums, and rose roots will be addressed separately under agenda items 41.2 and 41.8. Feedback on the outcome of discussions from the intersessional working group on nomenclature relating to the nomenclature of Appendix 3 listings, higher taxon listings, and the development of a standardized global checklist will be provided under agenda item 40 during the joint deliberations of the Animals and the Plants Committees later this week. Section 1 of PC 27 Doc 41.1 summarizes the progress made in implementation of nomenclature decisions for Cactaceae, Dalbergia species, and yews. Regarding the Cactaceae checklist and its supplement, draft decisions are provided in paragraph 7b as requested by PC 26. The Plants Committee is invited to recommend adoption of these draft decisions at COP20 and to consider decisions 18.304 to 18.306 as completed and therefore propose their deletion at COP20. Regarding the production of a CITES checklist for rosewood, Dalbergia species, no major concerns regarding the checklist has been brought to our attention, and it should be noted that any required revisions to this checklist can be coordinated under the provisions of Resolution Conf 12.11. The Plants Committee is thus invited to consider decisions 18.307 and 18.308 as completed and propose their deletion at COP20. Regarding the nomenclature for yews or taxus species, the Secretariat needs more time to formalize the agreement with the Royal Botanic Gardens, Edinburgh, to produce a CITES checklist for taxus species. The Plants Committee is therefore requested to recommend continuation of decisions 19.290 and 19.291 at COP20, with the aim to produce a final checklist ready for consideration at COP21. Section 2 of PC 27, Doc 41.1, summarizes the proposed way forward for additional flora matters following the recommendations from PC 26. Concerning the correct name for Dipteris oleifera, this item can be removed from the nomenclature work program of the Plants Committee as it will be addressed through the implementation of Decision 19.283 as reported on in document PC 27, Doc 41.5 on the standard nomenclature for Cumarus or Dipteryx species. Concerning the correct name for Pulnesia sarmientoi, following discussions at PC 26, consultation with range states, and further investigation by the nomenclature specialist, it is concluded that the best way forward is to consider Guanopterodendron sarmientoi as the accepted name for this species, and to consider Bulnesia sarmientoi and Plectrocarpa sarmientoi as synonyms. The Plants Committee is invited to request UNEP WCMC to make the required amendments to the CITES checklist. Concerning the correct treatment and placement of Turbinicarpus ex rosae florus on the appendices, following discussions at PC26 and further consultation with UNEP WCMC, it is concluded that the best approach would be for the Plants Committee to recommend that this be addressed as part of the terms of reference for a revised nomenclature checklist for the Cactaceae family as proposed in the draft decisions in paragraph 7b. Concerning the possibility of updating the standard nomenclature reference for the bulb genus Cyclamen, draft decisions for producing updated checklists for all 3 genera included in the CITES bulb checklist are provided in paragraph 13b, as requested by PC26. The Plants Committee is invited to recommend adoption of these draft decisions at COP20. Concerning the problems caused by homonym names and how best to deal with them on Species Plus, using Dracena marginata as an example, all recommendations made during discussions at PC26 were implemented, and this item can thus be removed from the nomenclature work plan of the Plants Committee. Concerning the possibility of producing a standard nomenclature reference for the agarwood-producing genera Aguilaria and Gyronops, time-stamped extracts of the 2 genera from Plants of the World Online are provided in Annex 1 and 2 as requested by PC26. These are intended to act as interim standard nomenclature references until the draft decisions for developing an updated nomenclature checklist as proposed in paragraph 15d are implemented. The Plants Committee is invited to recommend adoption of the time-stamped database extracts as the new interim standard nomenclature references at COP20, and in addition, to recommend adoption of the draft decisions in paragraph 15d. Section 3 of PC27 Doc 41.1 summarizes 3 new nomenclature items to be considered by the Plants Committee. The first new item concerns the nomenclature of Biocarnia species. Following the inclusion of Calibanus in the synonymy of Biocarnia, the Plants Committee needs to consider whether Biocarnia hookeri and Biocarnia glaciana, previously treated in Calibanus, need to be included in the higher taxon listing in Appendix 2, and, if appropriate, request range states to submit an amendment proposal to that effect for consideration at COP20. The Plants Committee is also invited to consider the suitability as a standard nomenclature reference of the reference cited in paragraph 16a, and, if appropriate, to recommend its adoption at COP20 as proposed in paragraph 16e. The second new item concerns the correct name for Nardostachys grandiflora. While assisting a party with a nomenclature inquiry, it came to my attention that the name of the Himalayan spikenard on Appendix 2 is incorrect. The Plants Committee is thus invited to consider this matter and, if appropriate, to request UNEP WCMC to amend the database entry for the species to reflect Nardostachys yatamansi as the accepted name and Nardostachys grandiflora as a synonym. The Plants Committee is also invited to consider the suitability as a standard nomenclature reference of the reference cited in paragraph 17a, and, if appropriate, to recommend its adoption at COP20 as proposed in paragraph 17b. The third new item concerns a standard nomenclature reference for Anacampsaros species, including Avonia. Anacampsaros is among the groups to be prioritized for the preparation of standard nomenclature references, as reported on in paragraph 7 of the joint document PC27 Doc 40.3 and AC 33, Doc 47.3. Paragraph 18 of PC 27, Doc 41.1 summarizes the nomenclatural history of this group and highlights certain potential problems relating to the scope of the listing should all species now treated in Anacampsaurus be included in the higher taxon listing. The Plants Committee is invited to consider and make recommendations regarding the substantive or non-substantive nature of inclusion of Xenia species and Thalinaria species within Anacampsaurus, as explained in paragraph 18b. The Plants Committee is further invited to consider and, if appropriate, recommend the creation of a time-stamped database extract as an interim standard nomenclature reference for consideration at COP20, and to consider drafting decisions for COP20 to recommend the development of a standard reference for consideration at COP21. The table in section 4, paragraph 19 of PC 27, Doc 41.1 summarizes the proposed ways forward on all these nomenclature matters, and the Plants Committee is invited to consider these recommendations. Madam Chair, depending on the outcomes of the discussions, I suggest for your consideration the establishment of an in-session working group in line with the recommendations contained in this document to formulate recommendations on some of these topics, including the drafting of nomenclature-related decisions where appropriate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the nomenclature specialist for that presentation. The floor is now open to Plant Committee members on the question of establishing a working group. The working group would work according to 41.1, section 4. Your views on this would be appreciated. Committee members, you have the floor.
Pas de commentaires de la part.
I see no requests for the floor from committee members. The floor is now open to observer parties. Do you have any comments to make on the suggestions made in document 41.1? That does not seem to be the case. Observers. Would any observers like to take the floor? UNEP WCMC, you have the floor.
Regarding paragraph 11 on Bulnesia sarmentoi and paragraph 17 on Nardostachys grandifolia, which proposes requesting UNEP WCMC to update the CITES checklist and species plus with the name of the species, we would like to note that these species are listed individually in the CITES appendices. Changing the names in the CITES checklist database without updating the appendices will therefore create discrepancies between the two sources of information. We will therefore suggest that these taxonomic changes be put forward for adoption at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, with the relevant scientific publication proposes as standard reference, and that the CITES checklist is only updated once the names have been updated in the appendices themselves. Regarding the proposed time-stamped database extracted from the Plants of the World Online database for standard reference for Aquilaria and Gyrenopsis genera in Annex 1 and Annex 2 to PC document Doc 41.1, we have a general comment regarding the distribution information contained in those extracts, which applies also to the proposed extract for dipteryx, document PC 27, Doc 41.5, Kaya, PC 27, document 41.6, and Rhodiola, PC 27, document 41.8. The extract contained distribution information based on traditional botanical units rather than at a country level, and we suggest that any distribution information within CITES standard reference should be provided at the country ISO code level, as that is the level at which CITES management operates. As a minimum, an interpretation aid that provides a conversion of any botanical units to ISO code should be included in new checklist adopted by the Conference of the Parties for interpretation purposes to facilitate input of the information into the CITES checklist. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, UNEP, for those remarks. Are there any other requests for the floor from observers?
Je ne vois pas d'autres demandes d'intervention.
I see none.
Donc,
we have agreed to a working group on this item, PC 2741.1 is the relevant document. I would suggest that we consider all of the other agenda items relating to nomenclature, and then at the end of those discussions, look at the working group's mandate. The botanical nomenclature specialist now has the floor to introduce Doc 2741.2. You have the floor.
non, it's not. Excusez-moi, c'est le secrétaire.
I do apologize. The Secretariat is going to introduce 41.2. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC 27, document 41.2 on nomenclature for aloes and its separately published Annex 2 present progress on the implementation of Decision 19279. Thanks to external funding from the UK, the Secretariat has contracted the South African National Biodiversity Institute, SANBI, to draft an updated nomenclature reference on aloe speck for the consideration of the committee and to finalize it for publication subsequent to the present meeting, taking into account the views of the committee on this matter. The draft checklist on aloe speck is contained in Annexes 1 and 2 of the document in PDF and machine-readable Excel versions, in accordance with the TORs agreed at PC 26. The Secretariat notes that the checklist contains 4 species that were previously considered to pertain to the not CITES-listed genus Tortolirion speck. The Secretariat considers that an inclusion of these 4 species in the genus Aloe would constitute a substantive change of the genus listing in terms of the discussions in the joint ACPC International Working Group on Higher Taxon Listings. Therefore, the committee should consider whether a listing proposal to COP20 is needed in case these 4 species are agreed to be included in the genus Aloe speck. The Plants Committee is invited to advice on the draft standard nomenclature reference contained in Annexes 1 and 2 to the present document, including on the matter described in paragraphs 7 and 8 of that present document, to determine whether the inclusion of 4 additional aloe species that were previously not listed in CITES appendices alters the scope of the protection under the Convention in accordance with paragraph 2F of Resolution 12.11 on standard nomenclature, to agree that decisions 19279 and 19280 have been implemented and can be proposed for deletion at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and to recommend the amendment of Resolution Conference 12.11 revision COP19 on standard nomenclature to replace the current nomenclature reference on aloes with the nomenclature reference contained in Annexes 1 and 2 of document 41.2. Thank you.
Merci.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for introducing this document. The floor is now open to committee members. The floor is open for any comments on 41.2.
Pas de commentaires?
I would like to ask committee members to give their views on what should be done under 41.2 with respect to the working group mandate. That really is the question here. With respect to the nomenclature working group, do we need to include the question addressed by 41.2, nomenclature for aloes? Any views? Committee members? The nomenclature specialist has requested the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would be useful to include it in the mandate of the working group so that we can get clarity on the view on those 4 species that was previously included in Cortolerion but now treated in the genus Aloe, so that we can decide on how to deal with them in the checklist. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam. I would like to ask committee members, in the light of the clarification we've just had from the nomenclature specialist, do you have, would you agree that the working group consider aloes as well? Thank you. Europe, you have the floor.
Working group, thank you.
Je pense, interprète, qu'elle a dit OK pour un groupe de travail. Voilà. Donc maintenant, je donne la parole.
The floor is now open to observer parties on this matter, 41.2. The floor is open.
Pas de demande de...
I see no requests for the floor. I now turn to observers. The floor is open.
Pas de demande de...
I don't see any observers requesting the floor. Following the clarification made by the nomenclature specialist, aloes are going to be included in the mandate of the working group on nomenclature. Thank you. We're now going to move on to PC 27 document 41.3, introduced by the Secretariat. You have the floor.
Document 41.3 introduces progress in implementing Decision 19285. The Secretariat issued a notification to gather views on a potential revision of the standard nomenclature reference for Appendix 2 listed orchids adopted at COP19. The annexes of the document contain the responses received to that notification. Paragraph 5 of the document outlines possible ways forward, and paragraph 6 outlines the Secretariat's proposal for next steps on this matter, which could be implemented through draft decisions to COP20 as outlined in paragraph 7 of the document. Based on the presented information, the committee is invited to review the responses contained in Annexes 1 to 8 to the present document, consider the options outlined in paragraph 5 of the present document and the proposed way forward in paragraph 6 of the present document, consider and agree to submit to the Conference of the Parties the draft decisions in paragraph 7 of the document. If appropriate, agree that decisions 19285 and 19286 have been implemented and can be proposed for deletion at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and to report its recommendations to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Thank you.
Merci.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for that presentation. The floor is now open to committee members. Could you say if you feel that this item 41.3 should be part of the nomenclature working group's mandate? Committee members, you have the floor. I would like, first of all, to give the floor to the nomenclature specialist and then to the Africa region. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unless there is agreement from the floor on the proposed way forward in paragraph 6 and the wording of the draft decisions in paragraph 7, we might need to discuss this in the working group as well, so it could be added to the mandate of the working group if that's agreeable.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam. I would now like to give the floor to Africa.
Thank you. Doc 41.3, we thank the Secretariat for the nomenclature specialist for preparation of this document. Africa region is a range state of orchids with several lookalike species. So, Madam Chair, we recommend for the CITES to support for in-depth studies, assessment that will enable a clear naming of these orchid species. But also, we recommend for the working group so that we can deliberate on how we can cover all orchid species, because there are several and some are look-alike, so that we can have a clear nomenclature on all orchid species. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the representative of the Africa region. The floor is now open to observer parties. You have the floor.
Allemagne, vous avez la parole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Germany would support to take this topic into the working group mandate. Thanks.
Merci.
Thank you, Germany. The floor is now open to observers. You have the floor.
Pas de demande de parole.
I don't see any requests for the floor from observers. Now, in the light of what we've heard, this agenda item will be added to the terms of reference of the working group on nomenclature. Thank you.
Le point suivant.
The next agenda item, PC 2741.4, is a document that was prepared by the Secretariat, and I invite the Secretariat to introduce it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Document 41.4 refers to the decisions on the nomenclature for Malagasy ebonies, and it provides an update on the development of the checklist as per decision 19.281. As a reminder, at the last meeting of the Plants Committee, the scope of the terms to develop such a checklist were agreed. Since PC 26, the Secretariat worked with the Missouri Botanical Gardens to prepare a checklist, the development of which was possible thanks to the financial contribution of the European Union. The Secretariat is grateful for this support. A first draft of the checklist is available in Annexes 1 and 2 to the present document, and they are respectively available in English and in French. In paragraphs 11 to 14 of the document, the Secretariat has included considerations related to Resolution Conf 12.11 on standard nomenclature, which are relevant to the scope of the listing of Malagasy ebonies in the appendices, and the need to address some inconsistencies in the CITES databases ahead of COP20, in anticipation also of the adoption of a final version of the checklist at hand. Madam Chair, we therefore invite the committee to consider the recommendations contained in paragraph 15 of the document, including a recommendation to amend the CITES checklist database ahead of COP20, provide feedback on the draft checklist available in Annexes 1 and 2 to the document, with a view to recommending a revised version for adoption as a new standard reference for Malagasy ebonies at COP20. With this in mind, the Plans Committee is also invited to agree that decisions 19.281 and 282 have been implemented and can be proposed for deletion at COP20. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci au secrétaire.
I thank the Secretariat for presenting the document. So our question is the same. Should we include this item in the terms of reference of the nomenclature working group? I open the floor to the nomenclature specialist. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suspect that there would be further discussions needed on the scope of the checklist as highlighted in paragraphs 11 to 14, and in that light it might be appropriate to also include this in the mandate of the working group.
Je vous remercie.
I thank the nomenclature specialist for the Plants Committee. Do we have any other members of the Plants Committee who wish to speak on the item? I see no request for the floor, so the list is now open to observer parties.
Pas de demande non plus.
No requests, sir. Observers, do we have any comments?
Donc nous avons UNEP.
So we have UNEP WCMC. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. UNEP WCMC would like to clarify the information included in the CITES checklist and Species Plus for Diospyros species and seek confirmation from the Plants Committee on the proposed approach. As noted in document PC27 Doc 41.4, the previous standard nomenclature reference, the Catalogue of the Vascular Plants of Madagascar dated 2016, included additional species that are now considered to go beyond the annotation of Diospyros SPP listing in Appendix 2, and they are not included in the current standard reference, Lowry et al. Dated 2022, which focus on the nomenclature of 88 Diospyros species that are large trees. We would like to ensure that there is transparency, that the request to update the CITES checklist to fully align with the standard reference will require the deletion of 42 species that occur in Madagascar. We have checked the CITES trade database, and there are 4 species proposed for deletion that have some recorded trade. For 3 of these species, namely Diospyros pervillei, Diospyros subsessifolia, and Diospyros levis, reported trade was in product not covered by the listing, and these trade records can therefore be deleted. However, for one of the species proposed for deletion, Diospyros macphersoni, trade was reported in Sunwood, which is regulated by the listing. If this name is to be deleted, then trade records will need to reconcile to the genus, since there are no other accepted species name to which the trade can be reassigned. On this basis, we are ready to make the requested changes and delete the 42 species, should this be the approach agreed by the Plants Committee. However, we wanted to ensure that the deletion of the 42 species and the implication for Diospyros macphersoni with the recorded trade was noted. In future, to guide the management of the CITES checklist, we will suggest the new standard references or accompanying introductory documents resolve all names from the previous edition where feasible, noting that where such names might have already been reported in trade, they cannot be easily deleted from the database. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I thank you, UNEP WCMC, for your comments and further specifications which you will be able to share with the working group which will be established. Thank you. Do we have any further request for the floor from observers? I see none. So we shall move on to the next item, which is on document PC27 Doc 41.5, and it shall be presented by the Secretariat. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document 41.5 on the nomenclature of dipterics provides an update of the implementation of Decision 19.283, highlighting progress of the implementation of the recommendations that the Plants Committee agreed on since it met last year at PC26. The annex to the document includes a proposed timestamp download of the Plants of the World online database, which was prepared by the specialist on botanical nomenclature. Madam Chair, as per paragraph 7 of the document, the committee is invited to consider recommending the timestamp extract as contained in the annex as a new nomenclature reference for the genus Dipteryx, and to agree that decision 19.283 has been implemented and can be recommended for deletion at COP20. Thank you, Chair.
Merci.
I thank the Secretariat. The recommendations are therefore mentioned in paragraph 7 of our document PC 27 Doc 41.5, and it's the same question. Should we include this item in the terms of reference of the nomenclature working group? I have a request for the floor from the nomenclature specialist. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the light of the comments previously made by UNEP WCMC regarding the distribution information in this document, we might need to discuss that in the working group to get clarity on how we will proceed with that.
Je remercie la...
I thank the Botanical Nomenclature specialist. Do we have any further members of the committee who would like to speak to this item? I see no further request for the floor. Now I open the floor to observer parties who wish to comment. We have Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we do have a question, which we would kindly seek clarification. Maybe this is something that could be discussed during the working group. But there is one species of Dipteryx that is endemic to one region, to Brazil, which is the Dipteryx hermetopasqualiana. And we see that this species is included in the online version of the Plants of the World, but we cannot, we are failing to find it in the annex, the time-stamped extract that is in the annex. So we would just seek clarification if we should include this species, the Dipteryx hermetopasqualiana, or this is something that we could move in another way. Thank you.
Merci au Brésil.
I thank Brazil for their question, which I shall now send to the nomenclature specialist. Is it possible to answer the question, please?
I will have to investigate why that species is not currently included, but that's definitely something we need to look at, and I will make contact with Brazil just to clarify the matter. Thank you. Thanks for bringing this to our attention, Brazil.
Je donne maintenant la parole.
I now give the floor to observer parties who wish to comment.
Pas de demande de parole.
No request for the floor, so I now open the floor to observers.
Pas de demande de parole.
No requests for the floor. So, in the light of the response of the nomenclature specialist, it would be a good idea to include this item in the terms of reference of the in-session nomenclature working group and also to take into account UNEP WCMC's comments. And we will also include Brazil's comment. We will now move to the next item, which is document 41.6, which will be presented by the Secretariat.
Secrétariat, vous avez la parole.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document 41.6 on the nomenclature of Gaia was prepared by the Secretariat in consultation with a specialist on botanical nomenclature. It provides updates on the implementation of Decision 19.284 since it was last reported at PC 26. At the request of the Secretariat, the nomenclature specialist prepared an updated time-stamped extract for the genus Gaia, which is found in the annex to the document. As stated in paragraph 7 of the document, in contrasting the current standard reference of the Resolution 12.11 with a timestamp in the annex to the present document, these are identical. Considering this, Madam Chair, in paragraph 9 of the document, we are inviting the Plants Committee to consider the progress described in the document in paragraphs 6 to 8, and agree that the decision 19.248 has been implemented and could be recommended for deletion at COP20. Thank you.
Merci au secrétariat.
I thank the Secretariat for their presentation. So the committee is invited to agree on the decisions which are under the recommendations in paragraph 9 of this document. And the same question arises, should we include this agenda item in the terms of reference of the in-session nomenclature working group? I see that the nomenclature specialist has requested the floor. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although we recommended retaining the current standard nomenclature reference in light of the comments on the distribution information in that reference by UNEP WCMC, I think we should add this to the mandate of the working group as well to discuss whether we would like to update the reference with amended distribution data to reflect countries. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la spécialiste de la nomenclature.
I thank the Plants Committee nomenclature specialist. Do we have any other requests for the floor from members of the committee? I see none. Would any observer parties like to make a comment? I see no request for the floor. Observers, the floor is open.
Sachant que nous avions déjà
Bearing in mind that we already have received comments from UNEP WCMC on this item, they will be taken into account at the working group if this is included in their terms of reference.
Donc, pas de commentaires.
I see no request for the floor, so we will move to the next item, which is on agenda item PC 27 Doc 41.7, which has been prepared by the Secretariat, and I now give them the floor to present the item.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC 27 Doc 41.2 on nomenclature for pachypodiums, and its separately published Annex 2 present progress on the implementation of Decision 12.279. Thanks to external funding from the UK, the Secretariat has contracted the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew to draft an updated nomenclature reference on Pachypodium spec for the consideration of the committee and to finalize it for publication subsequent to the present meeting, taking into account the views of the committee on this matter. The draft checklist is contained in Annexes 1 and 2 of the document in PDF and machine-readable Excel versions in accordance with the TORs agreed at PC26. The Plants Committee is invited to advise on the draft standard nomenclature reference contained in Annexes 1 and 2 to the present document, agree that decisions 19287 and 19288 have been implemented and can be proposed for deletion at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, recommend the amendment of Resolution 12.11 RevCop 19 on standard nomenclature to replace the current nomenclature reference on pachypodiums with the reference contained in Annexes 1 and 2 of the present document. Thank you very much.
Merci.
I thank the Secretariat. So we have heard the presentation of this document. Members of the Plants Committee, do you have any comments in particular on the inclusion of this item to the terms of reference of the in-session nomenclature working group? I give the floor to the nomenclature specialist.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unless there's agreement from the floor to accept the draft checklist as the new standard nomenclature reference, we might want to have a hopefully brief discussion on the checklist in the working group. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la spécialiste.
I thank the botanical nomenclature specialist. And so I would invite the meeting to say if you're in agreement with the standard nomenclature checklist that is proposed. If that should not be the case, we will include it in the terms of reference of the in-session working group on nomenclature. Members of the committee, do we have any request for the floor? Does silence mean agreement with the standard nomenclature, or would you like it to be included in the mandate of the working group? Are you in agreement with the standard reference? Otherwise, would you like us to include it in the terms of reference for the working group?
Je vous écoute.
I await your comments.
Europe, vous avez la parole.
Europe, you have the floor.
I think we would be happy with the inclusion of in the mandate.
Merci, la représentante de l'Europe. C'est vrai que j'ai fait un...
I'd like to thank the representative. Yes, I did a rather shortcut. Do we have any further requests for the floor? Observer parties? I see no request for the floor. Now, observers, do we have any comments? No requests either. So we can agree that this item shall be included in the terms of reference of the in-session nomenclature working group. Thank you.
Donc, le dernier document.
So the last item in this series on nomenclature is document PC 27.41.8, which will be presented by the Secretariat. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document PC 27.41.8 reports progress in implementing Decision 19289. Its annex contains a time-stamped database extract from the Plants of the World database. The nomenclature specialist has determined that all new species contained in it were described as split-offs of species included in OBA 2003 referred in the respective listing proposal, and therefore do not constitute a substantive change of the scope of the genus listing. The nomenclature specialist has further determined that all species listed under OBA 2003 are included in the extract as either an accepted species or a synonym to an accepted species. Based on these determinations, the committee is invited to A, advise on the draft standard nomenclature reference contained in Annex 1 to the present document and the matters outlined in paragraph 6 and Annex 2 to the present document. Agree that Decision 19.289 has been implemented and can be proposed for deletion at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And C, recommend the revision of Resolution Conf 12.11 RevCop 19 on standard nomenclature to replace the current nomenclature reference on recommend the revision of Resolution 12.11 RevCop 19 on standard nomenclature to reflect the time-stamped database extract as the new nomenclature reference for rhodiola spec. Thank you very much.
Merci.
I thank the Secretariat for introducing this document. I now give the floor to the nomenclature specialist to provide us with some feedback on what we've heard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rhodiola was also included in the comments by UNEP WCMC relating to the distribution information, and the United States has also recently alerted me to an update made on the Plants of the World online since the time-stamped extract was made. So these are two matters relating to this checklist that we might want to discuss in the working group as well.
Membres du comité.
Committee members, do you have any comments on this item?
Pas de commentaires.
No request for the floor. Observer parties? The floor is open. Should anyone wish to request the floor?
Pas de demande de.
I see no request for the floor. So I now open the floor to observers for, I beg your pardon, I see that we have the Russian Federation who has requested the floor. You may speak.
Thank you very much, ma'am. As you know, the Russian Federation is the country where rhodiola grows, and we are interested in further additional work on the nomenclature. We understand that the preliminary list recognizes many species which have already been described, but nevertheless, in a big part, this classification dates back to the classification applied in the flora of USSR publication, which is good in itself, but our scientific experts consider it necessary to have a deeper look at the current state of affairs. Thank you.
Merci à la Fédération de.
I thank the Russian Federation for their comment, and I open the floor for requests for the floor from observers.
IWCMC.
IWCMC, you have the floor.
peut-être, mais le document...
Document 41.8 refers to two annexes, Annex 1 and 2, and it doesn't seem to me that it's available on the Secretariat's website. If we look to document 41.7, the annexes were available in separate documents, but that is not the case for 41.8. That seems to me to be the case. I thank you for your comment. I will ask the Secretariat to give us some clarification.
Thanks for the observation. I have just scrolled through the documents, and Annexes 1 and 2 are both in the main document itself. The difference is just that there is no separate annex containing a machine-readable Excel spreadsheet. That's at the moment what I can say to this. I hope it clarifies. Thanks.
Merci.
I thank the Secretariat. I see no further request for the floor. So, if you would please give me a few moments, we will set out the terms of reference for the working group.
Alors, merci.
Thank you for your patience. So as agreed, we are going to set up an in-session working group on nomenclature. I'm going to read out the terms of reference. Taking into account the comments made at the meeting by the Plants Committee nomenclature specialist, the representative of the Africa region, Brazil, the Russian Federation, the United States, and UNEP WCMC, the terms of reference would be to consider proposed recommendations with respect to all of the decisions on botanical nomenclature in document PC 2741.1 as enshrined in paragraph 19 of the document. That's A. B. Consider the recommendations in the following documents with respect to the adoption of species. So we have PC 2741.2 on nomenclature for aloes. Then PC 2741.3, nomenclature of Appendix 2 listed orchids. Then PC 2741.4, nomenclature for ebonies, Diospyros species, populations of Madagascar. 41.5, standard nomenclature for Dipteryx species, and PC 2741.6 on Kaya species. Then we have PC 27 document 41.7, nomenclature for Pachypodiums, Pachypodium species. And PC 2741.8, standard nomenclature for rose roots, Rhodiola species, and PC 2732.1 addendum dealing with annexes 2 to 4, also to be considered by the working group. Is that clear to everyone? Thank you. We will now deal with the makeup of the working group. This is an in-session working group on nomenclature. To be chaired by the nomenclature specialist. Could I now hear from committee members who would like to participate in the work of the in-session working group? Europe, Africa, Central and South America and the Caribbean, that's plant committee members. Now the observer members: Russian Federation, Switzerland, United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, Brazil, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mexico, Peru, China, Let me repeat that. Russian Federation, Switzerland, United States, Germany, Mexico, China, United Kingdom, Brazil, South Africa, the DRC, and Peru. I would now like to turn to observers. Who would like to participate in the in-session working group? WWF, UNEP, IWMC, ATITP, thank you. Which brings us to the end of Monday, July 8th, 2024. We have a proposal to make to you before we break for lunch. We have a few extra minutes of the interpreters' time, and the chair kindly thanks the interpreters. We have to consider options available to us given that we are ahead of time. So we could start the working group on periodic review or nomenclature. Those working groups could get down to work this afternoon. They could have the plenary room with interpretation. That's option one. Or we could continue with Tuesday morning's program this afternoon. So would you like option one? The working groups get down to work in the plenary room with interpretation? Or should we take up Tuesday's agenda? We could start Tuesday morning this afternoon. What are your views?
Merci.
Okay, I've had some reactions. Let me start with the nomenclature specialist. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a chair of one of the working groups with a very huge mandate, I would like to request that we not start with the working groups this afternoon to give me time to properly prepare. I'm happy to start with the working group tomorrow morning, but let's see what the other proposals are. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, madam. We've taken note of your view.
Okay. Merci.
Thank you then. Let's now hear from other members of the Plants Committee. Europe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we would also support running ahead with Tuesday morning's agenda and not start the working groups this afternoon. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Oceania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The nomenclature specialist has a large job ahead of her, so I support her recommendation.
Merci. Région Afrique.
Thank you. Africa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. as Kajan could suggest that we proceed with the working group, then tomorrow's agenda will proceed as arranged. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Donc c'est option 1. Merci aux représentants de...
Thank you, sir. America has the floor. Thank you, madam. We would agree with the proposal made by the nomenclature specialist. Let's continue with our agenda this afternoon and have the working groups get down to work tomorrow. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Parties, you have the floor. Observer parties, the United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We understand that there are certain organizations that are planning to attend this meeting based on the working program, and so if we move too far ahead, they may risk missing the discussion for which they're planning to attend the meeting. So we wonder if it would be possible to start some of the working groups this afternoon and then begin tomorrow's working program tomorrow morning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Before giving the floor to observer parties who've requested it, including Indonesia, I'd like to remind you that this morning we have set up 3 working groups. One on medicinal and aromatic plants, which also has a significant agenda, as well as periodic reviews. Now, my understanding is that it would be difficult for the nomenclature specialist to start this afternoon. So we have a third option before us, which is that the working groups on medicinal and aromatic plants and the working group on the periodic review might be able to begin this afternoon. So I'm turning to them. Turning in particular to the representatives of Europe and the representative of Mexico. Could your working group start up this afternoon? Europe, you have the floor, to be followed by Mexico.
I think also for preparation a bit, this working group that will be quite comprehensive with all the parties who are attending the working group. I would prefer to follow the agenda, but what we could do, if possible, start at 5 o'clock till 7.
Okay. Mexique, vous avez...
Mexico, you have the floor.
In principle, I'm happy to do some progress. Actually, since we are a small delegation, it's going to be difficult to be in more than 2 working groups at the same time. So if we separate the work on nomenclature, which is also very important for us, we can do some progress this afternoon on periodic review. And I have a similar request to my colleague from plants to have a little more time for preparations, because we have regional coordination at lunchtime, so, and I will need some time to coordinate with the Secretariat to prepare the working group. So either starting at 3 or 4, you suggest from 3 to 7, or a little bit later, I will appreciate. Thank you.
Sorry, Indonésie avait demandé la parole.
Indonesia, you had requested the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. We sort of agree with, or in line with the statements by the US. We prefer to have the agenda for tomorrow done tomorrow. The reason is because our experts who are supposed to assist the agenda are landing tonight, so we sort of prefer to continue with the original program. And we agree that the option 3 might be a good way forward for this afternoon, if possible. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, colleagues.
Merci pour votre retour.
Thank you, Indonesia. We're going to hold some brief consultations and we'll get back to you.
Merci.
Thank you. We have taken all of these issues into consideration and would suggest that we will keep to the Tuesday program for tomorrow 9 till 12. But what we could do is have the working group on the periodic review meet today from 3 to 6 p.m. in this room. And if we go ahead with that, we would like to thank the interpreters and Mexico for their flexibility. What are your views on that? Does that suit? Working group on periodic review this afternoon from 3 to 6 in this room. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.
Donc, rendez-vous.
We will meet back here at 3 p.m. for the working group on the periodic review.
Excuse me, we have a quick announcement from the Asian region, and I understand there will be an Asian regional meeting today from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. in room S2-1. Is that correct, Jan? Yeah? Okay, seems correct. I don't know where the room is, but apparently downstairs. Thanks. Okay, so just to clarify, this is for Asian parties, not for everyone. It's for parties of Asia. Yeah, okay.